संसार दावा नलली ढलोका तनय कारुण्य घना घना त्वं
संसार दावा तनय कारुण्य घना घना
प्राप्तस्य कल्याण गुणनवस्य वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दम्
प्राप्तस्य कल्याण गुणनवस्य वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दम्
महाप्रभु की तन नृत्य गीता वादित्रमाद्यान् मनसोरसेना
महाप्रभु की तन नृत्य गीता
वादित्रमाद्यान् मनसोरसेना रोमाञ्चकम्पासुतरङ्गभाजो वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दम्
कम्पासुतरङ्गभाजो वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दम्
श्रीविग्रहाराधन नित्यनाना शृङ्गारतन्मन्दिरमर्जनादो
श्रीविग्रहाराधन नित्यनाना शृङ्गारतन्मन्दिरमर्जनादो
युक्तश्च भक्तं जनुञ्जतोऽपि वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दम्
भक्तं जनुञ्जतोऽपि वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दम्
वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दम् वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दम्
वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दम् वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दम्
चतुर्विधा श्री भगवत् प्रसादो स्वादन्न तृप्ता हरिभक्तसङ्घा
चतुर्वेदा श्री भगवत् प्रसाद सदन तृप्ता हरिभक्तसङ्घा
कृत्वैव तृप्तिं भजत सदैव वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दम्
कृत्वैव तृप्तिं भजत सदैव वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दम्
श्रीराधिका माधवयोरपार माधुर्यलीला गुणरूपनाम्ना
श्रीराधिका माधवयोरपार
श्रीराधिका माधवयोरपार माधुर्यलीला गुणरूपनाम्ना
श्रीराधिका
वनलोलुपास्य वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दम् प्रतिक्षणा
धनलोपास्य वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दम्
वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दं वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दम् निकुंजयुनो रतिकेलिसीधै यायालिभिरुक्ति अपेक्षणीया तत्रात्रिदक्षाततिवल्लभास्य वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दम्
वन्दे गुरु श्री
साक्षाद्धरित्वेना समस्तशास्त्रे उक्तस्तथा भावत एव साध्भिः
साक्षाद्धरित्वेना समस्तशास्त्रे उक्तस्तथा भावत एव साध्भिः
किन्तु प्रभुर्या प्रिय एव तस्य वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दम्
किन्तु प्रभुर्य प्रिय एव तस्य वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दम्
वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दम् वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दम्
वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दम् वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दम्
यस्य प्रसादा भगवत्प्रसादो यस्य प्रसादा न गति कुतोऽपि
यस्य प्रसादा भगवत्प्रसाद यस्य प्रसादा न गति कुतोऽपि
ध्यायन् स्तुवं तस्य यशस्त्रिसन्ध्यान् वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दम्
वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दम्
वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दम् वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दम् वन्दे वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दम् वन्दे गुरु श्री चरणारविन्दम् नामो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामीति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसदि गौर भक्त वृंद
जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसदि गौर भक्त वृंद।
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा
कृष्णा
कृष्णा हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा
कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा
निताय गौर हरि बोल, हरि बोल, हरि बोल, निताय गौर हरि बोल,
निताय गौर हरि बोल, हरि बोल, हरि बोल, निताय गौर हरि बोल। जय विश्वपार परमहंस प्रभुपादाचार्य अष्टोत्तर सरशिष्यमाद इस्कॉन प्रतिष्ठा विभूति सांस्थापकाचार्य वैष्णव शिरोमणि गौर प्रिय जन कृष्ण प्रेम भक्तिदाता पतित पावन His Divine Grace अभयचरविंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी महाराज श्रील प्रभुपाद जी की जय। श्री गौरी गुरु वर्ग पतित उद्धार की जय। श्री रूप सनातन भक्त रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल भक्त दास गुण सद्गोस्वामी प्रभु की जय। नामाचार्य शील हरिदास ठाकुर जी की जय। अनंत कोटि विष्णु वृंद की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। परम दयाल श्री नित्यानंद प्रभु की जय। जय प्रेम नाम संकीर्तन एक जनक प्रेम पुरुषोत्तम श्री सच्चिनंदन श्रीमन गौरांग श्री चैतन्य महाप्रभु गौर हरि मा वरनाय अवतार की जय। गोलोकेर प्रमधान हरिनाम संकीर्तन जय की जय। जो धर्म हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय। बृहदांग ट्रेंस नेतुल बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सेवा की जय। शिष्य राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपना राधा कुंड सम कुंड गिरिराज गोवर्धन की जय। श्री ब्रज वृंदावन मथुर धाम की जय। डेलो शिव शिष्य राधा नील माधव की जय। श्री मायापुर नवद्वीप एक चक्र धाम की जय। परम करुण शिष्य गौर निताय की जय। श्री पुरुषोत्तम चित्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। श्री जगन्नाथ स्वामी बलदेव प्रभु श्रीमाती सुभद्रा देवी सुदर्शन चक्र भगवान की जय। भक्ति सर्व विघ्न विनाशना कर्ण सिंहदेव भगवान की जय। गंगा माय जमुना माय की जय। तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी भक्ति देवी की जय। बोलो श्रीमती राधा रानी की जय। समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय। निताय गौर हरि प्रमानंदे। All glories to the assembled bodies. All glories to the assembled bodies. All glories to the assembled bodies. All glories, glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Praladadayine.
Praladadayine.
Hiranyakashipurvakshaha. Shilatankanakalaye.
Jaya Silatankanakalaye.
Ito Narsimha Parato Narsimha.
Ito Nisingha Parato Nisingha.
Yato Yato Yami Tato Narsimha.
Jaya Jato Jato Jami Tato Nisingha.
Bahe Narsimha Hrudaye Narsimha.
Bahe Nisingha Hridaye Nisingha.
Narasimha Madim Sharanam Prapadye.
Narasingha Madim Sharana Prapade.
Tavakara Kamalavare Naka Adbhuta Shringa Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanubringa Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare
Kara Kamala Vare Naka Adabhuta Singha Lalita Hiranyakashipu Kanabringa Kesavadrita Naradirupa Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re
Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare
Kesavadrita Narari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re
Jaya Narsimha Dev Jaya Narsimha Dev Jaya Narsimha Dev Jaya Narsimha Dev
Jaya Nisinghadev Nisinghadev Jaya Nisinghadev Jaya Nisinghadev
Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj
Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Prahlad Maharaj Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj
Nitya Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitya Gaura Hari Bol
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Shri Vrindai Tulasi Vai Priyai Kesava Satya Krishna Bhakti Pradirivi Satavatai Namo Namaha Vrindai Tulasi Vai Priyai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradirivi Satavatai Namo Namaha Vrindai Tulasi Vai Priyai Kesava Satya Krishna Bhakti Pradirivi Satavatai Namo Namaha Jai Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki
Namo Namah Tulasi Krishna Prayasi Namo Namah
Tulasi Krishna Prayasi Namo Namaha
Tulasi Krishna Prayasi Namo Namah
Tulasi Krishna Prayasi Namo Namaha
Radha Krishna Seva Prabhu Eya Vilashi
Radha Krishna Seva Prabhu Eya Vilasi
Radha Krishna Seva Prabhu Eya Vilashi
Radha Krishna Seva Prabhu, Eyo Bilashri.
Maya Shayanaloy Tara Vanchapurna
Chitovara Sharanala, Taravanchapurna.
Kripa Kori Korotare Vrindavanabasi
Tumi kripa kari karatare, Vrindavanavasi.
Kripa Kori Korotare Vrindavanabasi
Tumi kripa kari karatare, Vrindavanavasi.
Moraye Vilas Vilas Kuncheri Ava
Moraye Avila, Vilas Kunjediava.
Nayane Heri Bosada Jugala Ruparashi
Aminayane Vivo Sada, Yugala Ruparasi.
Nayane Heri Bosada Jugala Ruparashi
Aminayane Vivo Sada, Yugala Ruparasi.
Eni Vedana Daro Sakira Nugata Koro
Eni Vedana Dara Sakira Logata Karo.
Eni Vedana Daro Sakira Nugata Koro
Eni Vedana Dara Sakira Logata Karo.
Sevahari Kara Diye Koro Nijadasi
Sevayani Karo Diye Karo Nijadasi.
Sevahari Kara Diye Koro Nijadasi
Sevayani Karo Diye Koro Nijadasi.
Dina Krishna Dase Koye Namora Hoy
Dina Krishna Das Ko Eye Namora.
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sada Yenabasi
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sada Yenabasi.
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sada Yenabasi
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sada Yenabasi.
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sada Yenabasi
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sada Yenabasi.
Yani Kani Chapapani Brahmatyati Kani Cha Tani Tani Pranashanti Pradakshina Pade Pade
Kani Kani Sapapani Brahma Hatari Kanisa Tani Tani Prana Santi Pradakina Pade Pade.
Yani Kani Chapapani Brahmatyati Kani Cha Tani Tani Pranashanti Pradakshina Pade Pade
Kani Kani Sapapani Brahma Hatari Kanisa Tani Tani Prana Santi Pradakina Pade Pade.
Yani Kani Chapapani Brahmatyati Kani Cha Tani Tani Pranashanti Pradakshina Pade Pade
Tani Kani Sapapani Brahma Hatari Kanisa Tani Tani Prana Santi Pradakina Pade Pade.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani.
Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani.
Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi.
Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda.
Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo.
Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo. Shri Vrindayai Tulasi Bai Priyayai Ke Shavashatya Vishnu Bhakti Pradevi Shatabhatai Namo Namaha. Vrindayai Tulasi Bai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradevi Shatabhatai Namo Namaha. Vrindayai Tulasi Bai Priyayai Kesava Satya Krishna Bhakti Pradevi Sattvatai Namo Namaha. Jai Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. O Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter will his wishes fulfilled. Bestowing your mercy upon him, you make him resident of Vrindavana. My desire that you also grant me a residence in pleasure groves of Sri Vrindavan Dham. Thus, within my vision, I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of Kavitams of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maid servant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna praise, may I always swim in love, Shri Radha and Govinda. Shri Mati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhastakam Ki Jai. Chaito Darpanamarjanam Baba Mahada Vagni Nivapanam Shri Akari Vachandika Vitaranam Vidya Badhu Jivanam Anandam Burivardhanam Padipadam Purnam Swadanam Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Bauta Nija Sarva Shaktis Adrapita Niyamita Smane Nakala Itadrushi Tava Durdaivam idrishamya janinanuraga Trinarapi sunichena Tarorapi sahashnuna Amanina manadena Kirtaniya sadhari Na dhanam na janam na sundarim Kavitam va jagarishakamaye Mama janmani janmanishwari Bhavata bhakti raituki tvai Oinandatanuja kinkaram Paritama vishame bhavambudhau Kripaya tava pada pankaja Stita dhuli sadrisham vichintaya Nayanam galora shrudharya Vadanam gadgadarudhaya gira Pulakairitam vapukara Tavanama grahane bhavishyati Jugaitam nimishena Chakyusha prarusaitam Shunyaitam jagata sarvam Govinda virahe name Asli sabha padaratang pinastumang Adarshanan varmahatam karotuva Jata tathava vidadhatulam pato Matpranatastu saivana para Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhyastakam ki jai. Namo Mahavaranayo Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnayo Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauratveshe Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devim Gauravani Pracharine Nivrishesha Shunnavadi Pasatya Tisatarine. Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditioned life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan moment is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it prays to raise the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we're always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus we have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govind. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. The unwavering heart and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by holy names, but I'm so unfortunate I have no attraction for them. Once you chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself a Lord and stroll in the street, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your cause that devotes from service, birth to birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet somehow or other I am falling in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes will be decorated with tears of love, flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and it should remain so. Even if sunders him roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me, he is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Namaste Saraswati Devi Gurvani
There are 10 offenses in the matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1.
To blaspheme devotees who dedicate their lives to propagating the holy name of the Lord.
2. To consider the names of demigods, like Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, to be equal to or independent of the name of Lord Vishnu. 3.
to disobey the orders of the spiritual master,
4.
to blaspheme the Vedic literature or literature in pursuance of the Vedic version,
5.
to consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna as imagination,
6.
to give some interpretation on the holy name of the Lord,
7.
to commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord,
8.
to consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in the Vedas as fruit of activities of karma kanda,
9.
to instruct the faithless person about the glories of the holy name,
And 10.
to not have complete faith in the chanting of holy names, and to maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions in this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be a Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success, Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just like desire trees that can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vanchakalpatarabhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Vaishnava Thakur ki jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhute Shri Guru Pranama prayers ki jai. Om Aganya Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manubhishtam Sapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vande Ham Shri Guru Shri Jataha Pachakamalan Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahaguna Ragunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Saidvaitam Savadutam Pradijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahaguna Lalita Shri Vishaka Nivitam Sa Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Desatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Namine Shivarsavanavi Devi Daitaya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Dayane Prabhave Namaha Madhur Ujjvala Premadya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktita Shri Gora Karuna Shakti Vigrahayas Namastate Gor Rupanuga Virudapa Apasiddhanta Dvantaharine Namo Gora Kishoraya Sakshat Vairagya Murtaye Vipralambara Sambodhe Padam Pujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sachitananda Namine Gora Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gora Vir Bhava Bhumestvam Nirdesta Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhama Sri Jaganatayate Namaha Vanchakalpa Durabhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gurachuse Namaha Panchatatvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhakta Avataram Bhakta Gyam Namami Bhakta Saktikam Jayatam Suratur Bhangur Mama Manda Mater Gati Matsarva Swabhabhamuju Matsarvaswapadambojo Radha Madana Mohano Divyad Vindaranya Kalpadramadaha Shimad Ratnagara Simhasanastito Shimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prastalibi Sevimana Smarami Shiman Rasa Rasarambi Vamsivatatatastita Karsan Venuswaner Gopir Gopinatak Spriyestana Tapta Kanchana Gurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai Ishwara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadi Radhe Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam Chintamani Prakarasadma Sukalpa Vriksha Laksha Brite Susrabir Abhipaliyantam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambrahma Sevyamanam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Venam Pranantam Aravinda Dalayataksham Parhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandarpakoti Kamaniya Vishesha Shobham Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandra Kalasadvana Malyavamsi Ratnam Gadam Pranayakeli Kalavilasam Shamam Jibanga Lalita Nita Prakasam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Rittimanti Pasyanti Panti Kayanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Ananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha Vedesa Durlabham Adurlabham Atma Bhakto Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastu Koti Saptavatsara Sampragam Yoga Yoradapi Manasom Kungamanam Sopyasti Yat Prapadasimya Vichinti Tatve Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Chayatum Jagananda Kotim Yashchakti Rasta Jagananda Chayayadanta Andanta Rasta Paramanu Chayanta Rastam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Bhava Bhavita Dio Manajasta Taiva Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Subhusa Suktarya Meva Nigama Pratitaistuvanti Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavita Bhistabirya Eva Nijarupa Daya Kalavi Goloka Evani Vasata Kilatma Bhutto Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena Santaksa Deva Hidesu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Gunaswarupam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukalani Menatista Nanavatar Makarod Bhuvanesa Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramam Pumamyo Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yasya Prabha Pavavato Jagadanda Koti Koti Swasesu Vasudadi Vibhuti Binam Tad Brahma Niskalam Anantam Asesa Bhutam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Maya Hiyasya Jagadanda Satani Sute Trigunya Tad Visaya Veda Vitayamanam Sattva Vulambi Parasatvam Visuddha Sattvam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Matayamana Suya Prani Nampati Phalam Sparatamupetya Lila Yatena Bhuvanani Jayaya Jasram Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Goloka Namni Nijadamni Talechatasya Devi Maheswari Dama Sute 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 Te Prabhavani Chaya Vitasya Yena Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Shristista Te Pralaya Sadhava Sakti Reka Chayeva Yasya Bhuvanani Vibharti Durga Ichana Rupam Apyasya Chitesta Tesa Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Shiram Yata Dadi Vikara Visesa Yoga Sanjaya Tena Itataprita Stihestu Yasambhutama Pitata Samapaitikar Yad Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Departure Evita Santanam Abhyupetya Dipayate Rivita Hetu Samana Dharma Yastadrikeva Hicha Vishnu Tayavibhati Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Akarna Narnava Jaleba Jisma Yoga Nidramananta Jagadanda Saroma Kupa Adhara Saktim Avalamya Param Swamurtim Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yasyaika Nisvasita Kalamata Avalamya Jivanti Loma Vilaja Jagadandanata Vishnur Mahansa Yasya Kala Visesu Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Basmanya Tasma Sakalesana Jesu Teja Sriyamki Yat Prakatayat Apitat Mritatra Brahmaya Esa Jagadanda Vidanu Karta Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Pada Palava Yugam Vinidaya Kumbadvande Pranama Samayesa Ganadi Raja Vignan Vihantam Alamasya Jagatrayasya Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Agnir Mahika Ganamambu Maruti Sasya Kalasta Tatma Manasiti Jagatrayani Yasmad Bhavanti Vibhavanti Visanti Yamcha Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yaschak Suresa Savita Sakala Grahanam Raja Samasta Suramurti Resesa Teja Yasyagaya Brahmati Sambrita Kala Chakro Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Dharmota Papa Nichaya Sutayastapam Si Brahma Dikita Patagava Tayasta Jiva Yadata Matra Vibhava Prakata Prabhava Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yastendra Gopa Matavendra Mahoswa Karma Bandhan Rupa Falabhajana Matanoti Karmani Nirdhati Kinticha Bhakti Bhajam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yam Krodha Kama Sahaja Pranayadi Bitti Vatsalya Moho Guru Vasevya Bhavai Sanchintya Tasya Sadrisim Tanamapurete Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Shriya Kanta Kanta Parama Purusha Kalpatara Vajramal Bhumish Chintamani Kanamai Tuyamamritan Kataga Nam Natyam Gamanam Apivam Sipriya Saki Chiranandam Jyoti Shravati Parama Pitata Swadhyavapichasaya Trasyabi Shravati Shravya Vyasta Sumahan Nimesa Dakyova Rajitina Hiatrixamaya Vaje Sritad Vipam Tamaha Ilo Gohulakam Itiam Vidantas Te Santakshiti Varachari Kati Payaji Guru Vastika prayers Gijay. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy. Just as a cloud pours water on the forest fire to extinguish it, so the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence out from my respectful basis onto the lotus feet. As such, spiritual master is an ocean of auspicious qualities, chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments. The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind, sometimes his hair stands on end, he feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes like waves off my respectful basis onto the lotus feet of such spiritual masters. Spiritual masters always engaged in temple worship of Shishi, Radha, and Krishna. He also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship. The Lord of my respectful basis unto the lotus feet of such spiritual masters. Spiritual masters always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food, and alas is that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasada, he is satisfied to offer my respectful basis unto the lotus feet of such spiritual masters. Spiritual masters are always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika and Madhava, and their qualities, names, and forms of spiritual masters aspires to relish these at every moment are from my respectful basis unto the lotus feet of such spiritual masters. Spiritual master is very dear because he's expert in assisting the gopis who at different times make different tasteful arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavan. I offer my most humble obeisance unto lotus feet of such spiritual master. Spiritual master to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servant to the Lord. This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance unto lotus feet of such spiritual master as a bona fide representative of Sri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master at least 3 times a day. I should offer my respectful obeisance unto lotus feet of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Srimad Bhagavatam, Grantaraj Ki Jai, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 5, verse number 46. Panena te deva kata sudaya praveda bhaktya visadasaya ye vairagya saram pratilabhya bodham yatanja sanvi yur akunta disnyam. Panena, by drinking. Te, of you. Deva, O Lord. Kata, topics. Sudaya, of the nectar. Pravida, highly enlightened. Bhaktya, by devotional service. Visada asaya, with a greatly serious attitude. Yea, those who. Vairagya Saram, the entire purport of renunciation. Pratilabhya, achieving. Bodham, intelligence. Yata, as much as. Anjasa, quickly. Anviyu, achieve. Akunta disnyam, Vaikunta loka, in the spiritual sky. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. O Lord, persons who, because of their serious attitude, attain the stage of enlightened devotional service, achieve the complete meaning of renunciation and knowledge, and attain the Vaikuntha Loka in the spiritual sky simply by drinking the nectar of your topics. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The difference between the impersonalistic mental speculators and the pure devotees of the Lord is that the former, meaning the impersonalistic mental speculators, pass through a miserable understanding of the absolute truth in every stage, whereas the devotees enter into the kingdom of all pleasures, even from the beginning of their attempt. The devotee has only to hear about devotional activities, which are as simple as anything in ordinary life. And he also acts very simply, whereas the mental speculator has to pass through a jugglery of words, which are partially facts and partially a make show for the maintenance of an artificial impersonal status. In spite of his strenuous efforts to attain perfect knowledge, the impersonalist attains merging into the impersonal oneness of the Brahmajyoti, the Lord, which is also attained by the enemies of the Lord simply because of their being killed by him. The devotees, however, attain to the highest stage of knowledge and renunciation and achieve the Vaikuntha lokas, the planets in the spiritual sky. The impersonalist attains only the sky and does not achieve any tangible spiritual transcendental bliss, whereas a devotee attains to the planets where real spiritual life prevails. With a serious attitude, the devotee throws away all achievements like so much dust, and he accepts only devotional service, the transcendental culmination. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. O Lord, persons who, because of their serious attitude, attain the stage of enlightened devotional service, achieve the complete meaning of renunciation and knowledge, and attain the Vaikuntha lokas in the spiritual sky simply by drinking the nectar of your topics. Bora Premanandi, Haribol, Haribol, Haribol. So this is these are the demigods, the devatas, speaking about Krishna, this whole chapter. And they are giving very deep insights into what is actually Krishna consciousness and what is not pure Krishna consciousness and what is absolutely not Krishna consciousness. So, therefore, there's one phrase here that is, it says, the devotee has only to hear about devotional activities. That's what we're doing. We're hearing about Krishna, who he is, how to relate to him, what is the material world, how to engage in pure devotional service in the material world, and to relish Krishna's transcendental qualities and pastimes, and have festivals, and have Mahaprasadam, and it's all nectarian, it's all wonderful. There's nothing complicated about it. It's very simple and direct and pure Krishna consciousness, right? And one can go back to Godhead even in this lifetime by practicing it properly. Whereas, it says, the devotee has only to hear about devotional activities, which are as simple as anything in ordinary life, and he also acts very simply, whereas the mental speculator has to pass through a jugglery of words, which are partially facts and partially a make-show for the maintenance of an artificial impersonal status. This is a very, very, very profound statement. If we understand this, then we can see through the veil of illusion that the Mayavadis throw on us or throw on people. It's a veil of illusion. There are some facts, yes, but then those facts are obfuscated, covered or in a sense, misinterpreted because the Mayavadis have a conclusion that is false. So they have to support that conclusion, false conclusion, by word jugglery. So therefore, what is their false conclusion? Their false conclusion is there is no Vaikuntha, there is no Goloka, there is no Krishna, there's no Nanda Maharaj, there's no Yasodamani, there's no gopis, there are no Surabi cows, or there's no material world, there's no individuality, and there's only one thing, and that is the Brahman effulgence, and everything stops there. So this is a false conclusion. So they do speak some facts that are spiritual, but to support their false conclusion of the finality of spiritual life, they do a lot of word jugglery, and in order to come to the conclusion that there's only Brahman, there are no individuals. Your individuality, my individuality, is an illusion. Krishna's individuality is also an illusion. And when Krishna comes in the world, he comes with a material body. There's no such thing as he comes with a spiritual body. There's no such thing that he is never under the influence of the material nature. He's always in his spiritual, transcendental energy, and always acting on that level, even if in the material world. So they reject all of this. They say it's all nonsense. There's only one thing, there's Brahman. So you see how they can only reach that conclusion by word jugglery. So what does that mean? That means whatever Vedic principle there is that they talk about, they misinterpret it purposely so that they can come to their conclusion. See, now, for example, what is the doctrine of illusion for the Mayavadis? And what is the doctrine of illusion for the Vaishnavas? We can compare them. The doctrine of illusion for the Mayavadis is what I just explained, that there's no material world, it's a complete illusion. There's no individuality in the material world, that's also illusory. There's no spiritual world beyond the Brahmajyoti, meaning Vaikuntha, Goloka. All this is fairy tales. There's only Brahman. There's only one thing. So they are what you would call the original cancel culture people. They cancel everything except Brahman. Okay, so and as we learned in the previous verses, they're worse than the demoniac demons and the so-called different speculators besides themselves. There are other speculators, like the Gyanis and the Karma Yogis, or not Karma Yogis, the Karmis, the Gyanis, and the so-called mystic yogis. They're worse than that. They're worse than the materialists who think there's only material nature, there's no spiritual nature. So we see that the Mayavadis are the worst aparadis. They insult Krishna more than anybody else. Right. So, therefore, and they do this because they have a false conclusion of what is the highest state of spiritual realization. And to always support that, they have to cancel all these other things that are factual and truthful. And they take the same words, the same concepts that are in the Vedas as we do, but they give them false, misleading definitions. So their conception of Maya, or their conception of the doctrine of illusion, is what I just explained. Now, what is the doctrine of illusion according to Vaishnavas? They say that Krishna is the source of everything. So, and how is he that source? He has multiple energies, and there's transformation of those energies. So what does that mean? Well, let's say there's a lemon tree. Now, the transformation of the energy of the lemon tree produces a lemon. It produces leaves, and there's branches, and so forth, and roots, right? So the ultimate production is the fruit, the lemon, and an intermediate stage is the flower, and then when the flower is pollinated, it eventually becomes a lemon. So all that is transformation of the energy of the lemon tree. The Mayavadis reject this. They say there's no such thing as transformation of energy. There's only one energy, that's Brahman. So you see, to arrive at their conclusion of what is the highest state of spiritual realization, they have to give false definitions to the Vedic concepts. Now, what is the Vaishnavas' point of understanding illusion? They say that Krishna is the absolute truth, and he's the source of everything, and everything that emanates from him is also the absolute truth. So even the material nature, although it is his inferior spiritual energy, it is still spiritual, and it is still, let's say, sat. What is not sat are the forms. Sat meaning eternal. What is not sat are the forms that are taken by the combination of earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego, or the 24 fundamental elements, material elements. They form different things, just like the potter. He has a wheel, and he makes it turn, and he has a chunk of clay, and then he forms the clay into different forms, like dishes and cups and plates, right? So those forms are not eternal, but the clay is, because the clay is made of matter, and matter is inferior spiritual energy. So it is eternal, but it changes, but it can be molded into different forms, and those forms are not eternal. And eventually when they break down, they come back to the original earth or water or fire or etc. or air. So what is illusory for the Vaishnavas are all those temporary forms, and the body is included. The body is a temporary thing. It's not eternal, right? So accepting the body as oneself is the ultimate illusion, or for the devotees. And now the Mayavadis will say the same thing, but they, in order to get to their conclusion that there's only Brahman, they have to reject the individuality of the soul. When I say the Mayavadis say the same thing, they also say that the body is temporary, right? And therefore, but they think it's an illusion. It cannot be used in the service of the Lord. But yet the Vaishnavas say, but no, everything can be used in the service of the Lord, because everything is coming from the Lord and it belongs to the Lord. So everything should be used in the service of the Lord. So if you use the body in the service of the Lord, then it will become a stepping stone to going back to Godhead. Right? Now, but what the Mayavadis say is, no, you have to stop the body. You have to meditate. And when you start meditating 24 hours a day, then you're coming closer to achieving this Brahman realization. So they start with 10 minutes a day, and they increase it. And then they go to maybe 8 hours a day or 24 hours a day, you know. So that's, for them, that's a type of samadhi. And then from that point, you can merge into the Brahman. So they want to stop everything, and the Vaishnavas want to use everything in the service of Krishna. There are major differences between Vaishnavas and impersonalists. And because of that, people get confused. They say, well, they're doing some spiritual things also. You know, they use the same words that you guys use. Yes, but they give false definitions to it. Or as Prabhupada says here, the devotee has only to hear about devotional activities, which are as simple as anything in ordinary life. Yeah, you cook food and you eat it. That's what the karmis do. But we cook food and only those things that are pleasing to Krishna, and we offer it to Krishna with love and devotion, and then he offers it back as his mercy, and then we respect prasadam. So, yeah, you could say, well, they're doing the same thing. You know, you cook and you eat. No, it's not. It's not the same thing. We cook only those things that Krishna likes and accepts, and we offer it to him with love and devotion, and then he offers it back as his mercy or prasad, and then we respect the prasadam. So although it looks like the same thing, it's not the same thing. And therefore, this is confusing to some people, but not to the devotees. They know they have certain fundamental truths. Now, we're going to go over a list of those fundamental truths. It's explained in the 10th chapter, starting with verse number 3. Yomam ajam anadim cha veti loka maheshwaram asamuda samartyesu sarvapapai pramuchyate. He who knows me, meaning Krishna, as the unborn, as the beginningless, as the Supreme Lord of all the worlds, he only, undiluted among men, is freed from all sins. Okay, so this is a very simple verse. In other words, whoever knows Krishna as the unborn, meaning he's eternal. He's eternal in the past, eternal in the present, eternal in the future. And we are coexistent as far as that goes. We are also eternal in the past, eternal in the present, eternal in the future. Right? Because we're part and parcel of Krishna. And he's unborn, he's beginningless, meaning you cannot trace his origin because he's always existed. And he's the Supreme Lord of all the worlds. In other words, he's controlling everything. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchitananda Vigraha Nadiradi Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. He's the cause of all causes. Okay, so in the purport, Prabhupada writes, as stated in the 7th chapter, 3rd verse, Manusyanam Sahasresu Kashit Jati Siddhaye Jatatamapika Siddhanam Kashit Mahamviti Tatpata. It says, those who are trying to elevate themselves to the platform of spiritual realization are not ordinary men or ordinary persons who have no knowledge of spiritual realization. But out of those actually trying to understand the spiritual situation, one who can come to the understanding that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the proprietor of everything, the unborn, is the most successful spiritually realized person. So the Mayavadis are spiritualists. They believe that there is a God, but they believe that God is impersonal, right? So they only have one part of the truth, but to maintain and stop everything at that one part, they have to misinterpret things. See? So therefore, they are speculators, not actually following the Vedic path. The Vedic path is called, there's Aroha and Avaroha. So Aroha is ascending knowledge, and Avaroha is descending knowledge. So the Vaishnavas, they accept descending knowledge. Krishna speaks, we accept. The Mayavadis, they accept ascending knowledge. Okay, Krishna said something, but they misinterpret it. So, therefore, they're like the material scientists that misinterpret things. They're perceiving things, but they misinterpret them. So they say, well, the world started with a big bang. They don't mention Krishna, right? And there's no God. Everything is happening, everything formed due to the gravity. Well, those are all misleading concepts. They're not true. And they can't prove it anyway. They claim they can prove it by word jugglery. But that's why when a scientist starts talking about the Big Bang, you don't understand anything. And he starts using words that you don't know. And he says, well, this thing happened and then that thing happened. But there's no proof that any of those things happened according to their explanation. They try to make it seem like it happened, but they always are going to say, well, In fact, let's do this just to as show an example. Look up the Big Bang, and let's see what they say, because it's very instructive to be able to see their word jugglery. And they learned this from the Mayavadis, by the way. They're the first and most foremost word jugglers. So what does it say about Big Bang? Yeah.
The Big Bang event is a classical theory that describes how the universe expanded from an initial state of high density and temperature. Various cosmological models of the Big Bang explain the evolution of the observable universe from the earlier known periods through its subsequent large-scale form. These models offer a comprehensive explanation for a broad range of observed phenomena, including the abundance of light elements, the cosmic microwave background radiation, and large-scale structure. The overall uniformity of the universe, known as flatness problem, is explained through
What? Known as what?
flatness.
Oh, flatness.
Yeah, flatness problem.
Do you know what that means?
No.
Nobody knows what that means. Flatness problem? Is that what it is?
There is a link to this. Let's see what is it.
Flatness problem. Is that
Yeah,
what it is?
like flatness
Yeah.
problem. yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So this is a flatness problem is a cosmological fine-tuning problem within
A
the
what? Cosmological what?
fine-tuning problem.
Fine-tuning problem.
From there to they're linking to another concept, and they're saying that
See, here's where the word jugglery goes. You know, fine-tuning problem. You know, cosmological fine-tuning. How can the cosmos fine-tune itself? Who is fine-tuning, right? All right, like, go back to the Big
yeah,
Bang.
so coming back to the
I mean, we stop right there with the fine-tuning because that's nonsense. Who
Mhm.
fine-tuned the cosmos? You know, go ahead.
yeah, so they're saying that the overall uniformity of the universe, known as the flatness problem, is explained through cosmic inflation. That's another concept.
That's another word you don't
Yeah.
understand. Cosmic inflation. You have to go to another
Link.
link to know that. Go ahead.
A sudden and very rapid expansion of the space during the earliest moments. However, physics currently lacks a widely accepted theory of quantum gravity that can successfully model the earliest
Okay,
conditions.
so that means that their model is nonsense because it violates everything that Einstein said, and the violation of Einstein's theory of matter and energy. In other words, in a matter of a split second, the universe expanded, right? I mean, it's expanded faster than the speed of light, and this is a violation of what Einstein said. Because Einstein said light is the fastest thing, 176,000 miles per second, right? But to come to their theory of the Big Bang, they say that the Big Bang violates what Einstein said because it had to go much faster than 176,000 miles per hour, per second. You see, so go ahead, read a little bit more. See,
Yeah, so physics currently lacks a widely accepted theory of quantum gravity that can successfully model the earliest conditions of the Big Bang. Currently, crucially, these models are compatible with the Hubble-Lemaitre law, apparently the law that the observation.
you don't know what that is. Also, go ahead.
So the observation that the farther away a galaxy is, the faster it is moving away from Earth. Extrapolating this cosmic expansion backwards in time using the known laws of physics, the models describe an increasingly concentrated cosmos preceded by a singularity.
Okay, singularity means there was a point of infinite density. So there's no such thing as a point of infinite density. In other words, you compress the whole universe into a little point. Now, point is something in mathematics is defined as not having any measurement, right? And it says it all comes back to this singularity. There was this little point, and then it exploded, and all this energy and matter came out of it, and then it started to form itself into different things. And they try and explain all this, but the way they explain it is by word jugglery. So, I mean, they're using words now and concepts. You don't know what they mean. You have to go somewhere else to find out what they mean by it. So once you finish doing all that, you're confused. Only a few people understand what they're talking about, right? And even those people, they know that they're basically playing the people. Okay, so that's enough. I mean, if you want to read all
the singularity is where the time and space have no meaning, have lost meaning.
Lost what? Meaning.
Meaning. So they don't exist.
What does that mean? Time and space have no meaning. Right? It means that their theory has no meaning. That's what it means. Right? You see what this is? You see what they do, right? And this is complete nonsense. And they learned this from the Mayavadis. They learned it from the Mayavadis, this word jugglery. Right? Okay. So, here the Lord is described by the word aja, meaning, here the Lord is described by the word aja, meaning unborn, but he is distinct from the living entities who are described in the second chapter as aja, or meaning take birth and die due to material attachment. So everyone is born. Everyone is born in the material world, but Krishna is not born because he's always existing. But everyone is born, although our soul, sort of being part and parcel of Krishna, is unborn, but the body we get is born. And then it begins to grow. It goes through 6 stages. There's birth, growth, staying, or being maintained, and then giving off byproducts like children, and then dwindling and dying. Right? So it says, but he, meaning Krishna, is distinct from the living entities who are described in the second chapter as aja. The Lord is different from the living entities who are taking birth and dying due to material attachment. The conditioned souls, so the living entities, or us, we're also aja, we're not unborn, right? But when we get covered by a material body, it looks like we're born, and then we die, right? So this is all bewildering to people, right? This birth and death, and therefore they cannot accept that Krishna is someone who's never born and never dies and has an eternal body, right? It's confusing because we have a temporary body, right? And it's subject to birth and death. And then it gets more confusing because we say that, but the soul in this body is eternal, right? So, therefore, it's just too difficult for people to most people to understand. Right? So it says, the Lord is different from the living entities who are taking birth and dying due to material attachment. That means the Lord doesn't have any material attachment, although he's the source of all matter. But we become attached to material body and material things, and because of that, we eventually die. But we don't die, the body dies, and then we get another body if we die in ignorance, or if we die fully conscious of Krishna, we go back to the spiritual world in our eternal body. All this is bewildering for people. So they don't know exactly what to believe. And there's different theories in Christianity about birth and death, in Islam, Judaism, and so forth. Okay, so even when he, meaning Krishna, comes to this material world, he comes as the same unborn. Therefore, in the 4th chapter, it is said, that the Lord, by his internal potency, is not under the inferior material energy, but is always in the superior energy. So when Krishna comes and appears in this world, he's not subject to the material energy. He's always comes with his spiritual energy, which is eternal and full of bliss. So this is bewildering for people. They say, well, he looks just like an ordinary man. In fact, in some places, he's described as having he's like an ordinary human being. Yeah, that's a fact. It looks like that, but it's not. So these are the things, just like in Christianity. To be a Christian, you have to believe that Jesus was not born by the normal process of husband and wife joining together, and there's a sperm and there's an ovum and things like that. He had what's called immaculate. The Christians say he had immaculate birth. So, if you don't believe that, you can't be a Christian. And you have to believe that he died and resurrected. So these are things that are imposed. If you don't believe these things, you can't be a Christian. Well, in Krishna consciousness, you have to also believe that when Krishna comes, he comes only in his spiritual energy. He's not subject to the material energy. Although he seems to be an ordinary child, but then he does extraordinary, impossible feats, such as lifting Govardhan Hill with his pinky when he's only 7 years old. And Govardhan, it's not a hill, it's a mountain. And then also having 16,108 wives and 16,108 palaces for them, and giving each wife 10 children. So this is all bewildering to people, right? Now, which thing are we going to accept? The speculations of the Mayavadis, or the speculations of the atheistic scientists, or are we going to accept the Shastric explanation of Krishna and his pastimes? So this is a decision that we have to make in our life, who we're going to believe. Knowledge is not what you study or learn. Knowledge begins by accepting an authority. So if you think that you can become Microsoft certified in Calcutta by taking a course there, it's called Microsoft certification course, right? And they give you a diploma after your course. So you have faith that they're going to teach you how to work in Microsoft, right? Or if you take JavaScript, right? They promise you that if you follow and pass their course, you'll get a job in Amazon because they use JavaScript there or something, whatever. So you have to have faith in an authority. That's the beginning of knowledge. It's not what you study. It's the faith in the authority and the faith that the information they're giving you is bona fide. Right? So this is the same thing. Which authority are we going to accept? If we accept Krishna, then here's what we have to accept. It says, here the Lord is described by the word Aja, but he is distinct from the living entities, who are described in the second chapter as Aja. The Lord is different from the living entities who are taking birth and dying due to material attachment. The conditioned souls are changing their bodies, but his body, Krishna's body, is not changeable. Even when he comes to the material world, he comes as the same unborn. Therefore, in the fourth chapter, it is said that the Lord, by his internal potency, is not under the inferior energy or inferior material energy, but is always in the superior energy. So here's something you have to accept. Can you argue against it? You can try, but it would not lead to anything positive by arguing against it. In this verse, the words Veti Loka Maheshwaram indicate that one should know that Lord Krishna is the supreme proprietor of the planetary systems of the universe. There's another thing you have to accept, right, in order to be Krishna conscious. And then he was existing before the creation, and he is different from his creation. All the demigods were created within this material world, but as far as Krishna is concerned, it is said that he is not created. Therefore, Krishna is different even from the great demigods like Brahma and Shiva. And because he is the creator of Brahma, Shiva, and all other demigods, he is the supreme person of all planets. Sri Krishna is therefore different from everything that is created, and anyone who knows him as such immediately becomes liberated from all sinful reactions. In other words, if you accept these things, that these statements that are in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam about Krishna, you become free of sinful activities and reactions. Sri Krishna is therefore different from everything that is created, and anyone who knows him as such immediately becomes liberated from all sinful reactions. One must be liberated from all sinful activities to be in the knowledge of the Supreme Lord. Only by devotional service can he be known, and not by any other means, as stated in Bhagavad Gita. Well, the scientists are trying to know the truth about the universe through what you would call experimentation, observation, or empiricism, what they can perceive with their material senses. And that's going to be very, very sketchy. It's not going to be a complete understanding of anything, because there's much more reality that is unseen than what we see. And like, for example, do we see what's on other planets? No. Therefore, we postulate by speculation that there's probably no human beings on those other planets. That's not true. There are living beings in every planet of the universe. But then they say, well, we went to moon, we didn't see anyone there. Well, you didn't see anyone there because the bodies of the people on the moon are differently constituted than the bodies of people on the earth. The bodies of people on the earth, the main ingredient is water and earth, and then there's some air, and there's some fire, and there's space, right? But on the moon, the body, the major element of the bodies on the moon is the mind. And there is some earth, there is some fire, there is some water, but very minutely. Now, the bodies of the living entities in the sun, the major material element is fire. So how are you going to see these things? You can't see these things with the body that we have. And you can't even live in those planets with this body, you see. So they're trying to do things that are impossible. That is, going and setting up a whole colony on the moon or on Mars, or to try and explore the sun. How are they going to explore the sun? Way before they get to the sun, they burn to death, right? So you see, they're trying to do things that are impossible to attain, and but they keep claiming that they will one day do it, right? So basically, they're cheating governments and taxpayers by wasting their money trying to do things that are impossible. Okay, so then it says, Sri Krishna is therefore different from everything that is created, and anyone who knows him as such immediately becomes liberated from all sinful reactions. One must be liberated from all sinful activities to be in the knowledge of the Supreme Lord. Only by devotional service can he be known, and not by any other means, as is stated in Bhagavad Gita. Next, one should not try to understand Krishna as a human being. As stated previously, only a foolish person thinks Krishna to be a human being. This is again expressed here in a different way. A man who is not foolish, who is intelligent enough to understand the constitutional position of the Godhead, is always free from all sinful reactions. If Krishna is known as the son of Devaki, then how can he be unborn? That is also explained in Srimad Bhagavatam. When he appeared before Devaki and Vasudeva, he was not born as an ordinary child. He appeared in his original form, meaning he appears like Narayana, with 4 arms, right? And with the appearance of Narayan. And then he transforms himself into an ordinary child. Well, But he's not an ordinary child. He looks like an ordinary child, but he does not act like an ordinary child because he was able to kill the Sakatasura demon when he was only a baby, right? And then he's able to lift up Govardhan Parvat, or mountain, when he's only 7 years old. And he's able to dance with 16,108 gopis. And so his activities are not of an ordinary child. They're extraordinary. He swallowed the terrible fire that was threatening to burn down everything in Vrindavan. And then he danced on the heads, the hundreds and thousands of heads of the Kaliya serpent, and made him spit out all his poison. So these are you can't emulate those actions of Krishna. Although he looks like an ordinary boy with 2 arms, but that's about it. Everything else about him is supernatural, and he proves it. So anything done under the direction of Krishna is transcendental. In other words, if we believe that Krishna is what he says he is, and what's being stated about him here in the 10th chapter, 3rd verse, and other verses of the Bhagavad Gita, then we follow his dictation, or follow his instructions, right? It cannot be contaminated by material reactions, which may be auspicious or inauspicious. In other words, anything you do following Krishna's instructions cannot be contaminated by material reactions, which may be auspicious or inauspicious. The concept that there are things auspicious and inauspicious in the material world is more or less a mental concoction, because there is nothing auspicious in the material world. What is auspicious about birth, old age, disease, and death? Nothing. They're all suffering. Say, people say, "Oh no, well, this is good because my boy got, a very high score in the SAT test." What's good about it, right? It's not eternal. It's not sat. It's asat. It's a temporary thing. Just like, "Oh no, this is very good. My boy hit 2 home runs in the Little League game when he was 8 years old." Well, okay, but what's auspicious about it when he's going to get old and sick, right? Or just like there was a little boy the other day in a school, and they have a period where the kids go to sleep. He went to sleep like the other kids, but he didn't wake up. He died in his sleep. What's auspicious about that? You see, that's the nature of the material world. There's nothing auspicious in the material world. The things that we call auspicious are not really auspicious. So it says there's nothing auspicious in the material world. Everything is inauspicious because the very material world is inauspicious, because it's going to appear, stay for some time, and then it's going to disappear. And it's not destruction, but there's dissolution. So when something is dissolved in water, you don't see it anymore, but it's still existing. So it's dissolved. It's reabsorbed into the body of Mahavishnu, waiting for the next material creation. We simply imagine it to be auspicious. Real auspiciousness depends on activities in Krishna consciousness in full devotion and service. Therefore, if we all want our activities to be auspicious, then we should work under the directions of the Supreme Lord. Such directions are given in authoritative scriptures such as Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, or from a bona fide spiritual master. Because the spiritual master is the representative of the Supreme Lord, his direction is directly the direction of the Supreme Lord. The spiritual master, saintly persons, and scriptures direct in the same direction. In other words, if the spiritual master says something that's different than what Krishna has said in Bhagavad Gita, or what the previous acharyas have said, then that is a no-no. It's a red flag, and we have to be cautious. So, but if there's no contradiction between these three sources, then we know that it's the truth. All actions done under such direction are free from reactions of pious or impious activities of this material world. The transcendental attitude of the devotee in the performance of activities is actually that of renunciation, and this is called sannyasa. As stated in the first verse of the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, one who acts as a matter of duty because he has been ordered to do so by the Supreme Lord, and who does not seek shelter in the fruits of his activities, anasrita karma phalam, is a true renouncer. Anyone acting under the direction of the Supreme Lord is actually a sannyasi and a yogi, and not the man who has simply taken the dress of the sannyasi or a pseudo-yogi. So, the six good modern Mahajanas, they received large donations and they built opulent temples to reestablish Vrindavan over 500 years ago. But they did not live in those temples. They continued to live under a different tree every night, right? They did not change their mode of living in what you would call severe poverty. They ate very little, they slept very little, they were always contemplating Krishna and talking about Krishna. They were helping the poor farmers and the residents of Vrindavan. And so everybody liked them because they were genuine saintly persons. See? So a saintly person, especially a Brahmana or a saintly Vaishnava, basically has a vow of poverty. And although he may receive large donations, he or she may receive large donations, they use it all in the service of Krishna, but it doesn't change their lifestyle of simple living, high thinking. See? So, therefore it says, as stated in the first verse of the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, one who acts as a matter of duty because he has been ordered to do so by the Supreme Lord, and who does not seek shelter in the fruits of his activities. So what does that mean? The sannyasis, the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, they didn't live opulently in the temples that they built, which were opulent. They continued to live outside in either a little hut or just sleeping under a tree. So such a person, they did not take shelter in the fruits of their activities. And asrita karma phalam. Such a person is a true renouncer. Anyone acting under the direction of the Supreme Lord is actually a sannyasi and a yogi, and not the man who has simply taken the dress of the sannyasi or a pseudo-yogi. Okay. So now, we're going to have to stop there and continue this tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to get into the real, let's say, essential knowledge of Krishna's transcendental qualities. And that is the next verse, 10th chapter, 4th and 5th verse. You should read this. It's a long purport and explains Krishna's unique transcendental qualities. Okay, we'll stop right there. Are there any questions? The homework we had yesterday, that's for next week, is do a survey of what's called a survey about self-realization, and make up questions that would be pertinent to ask people on the street. First of all, we're going to use this technique for preaching to people on the street. We don't go with a book in our hand, although there'll be other devotees that can bring the books to you. But we go up to a person with a iPad and say, "Sir, we are conducting a survey here. Would you like to take it? It's free. It's very short. Only 6 questions. They can answer yes or no, to see if you are interested in self-realization." And like an example of one question would be, are you interested in knowing who you are as opposed to a mask or an identity that you espouse or want, but do you actually know who you are? So they could say yes or no, right? And then, so we make 6 questions that we ask them. It'll be very quick, and they're yes or no questions. And then, based on the way they answer it, we can determine whether they're in the mode of goodness, passion, or ignorance. And then that will determine how we can talk to them. If they're in the mode of ignorance, then, by the way, if they answer the 6 questions, they get a goodness cookie. They have to know that also, to be an incentive to answer the 6 questions. And they're just yes or no questions. Now we have to make those questions up. And the way you do that is you have to actually, the teenagers, they ask their friends, are you interested in self-realization? What do you know about yourself? Etc. You make up these 6 questions, and then we'll choose the best 6 questions to use on Sankirtan. Okay, so you have a question.
Yes, Maharaj.
That's yesterday's homework. Tomorrow's homework is to read 10th chapter, text 4 and 5. Go ahead.
So my question is, how do we know that we're understanding Krishna as God and not as a human when,
Okay, your
hearing about
question
his
is, how do we
pastimes?
know that we are understanding Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead and not an ordinary human being? Is that it? That's your question. By reading 10th chapter, verses 4 and 5. Answer to your question. You read it, then you'll know that Krishna is not an ordinary human being. So the 10th chapter, verse 3 that we discussed today is a preliminary. It also explains some things, but 4 and 5 goes much deeper into those things that helps you understand Krishna's unique qualities as a Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay? It's called the science of Krishna. It's a big topic. But there's a nice summary of it in verse 3, 4, and 5 of the 10th chapter. Okay. Any other questions?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Krishna.
We spoke about Mayavadis and they talk about Brahman, right? But how do they justify about Brahman?
Justify what?
That Brahman exists and nothing else, like no Goloka, spiritual life.
Yeah, but we also accept that Brahman exists, right? But no, because they have a philosophy that's called Kevala Advaita. It means absolute oneness. There's nothing else for them than that absolute oneness. So they cannot accept the fact that there are an infinite number of individual living entities. Because how can there be absolute oneness if there's so many living entities? They cannot accept that Krishna is a transcendental, eternal living entity, because that would also violate their theory that there's only Brahman and nothing else. So, to validate their theory that there's only Brahman, they have to reject all these other things. Krishna as eternal, Ishvara, Sarvabhutanam, Satchitananda Vigraha, right? Anadir Adir Govinda, he's the cause of all causes. And he's a person. They have to reject that. And they have to reject your individuality, my individuality, their own individuality, to come to the theory that there's only Brahman. Now, Brahman exists, but it's not the end of everything. So that's the verse, 1st Canto, second chapter, which it says that there's Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Yeah. So, therefore, they can't accept Srimad Bhagavatam as a bona fide Vedic literature, because then they would have to accept all this knowledge about Krishna. Or they can read Srimad Bhagavatam, lecture on it, but give it their own interpretation. You see? So, and this has been going on for a long time, right? And it's still prevalent, very highly prevalent in India. In fact, 90% or more of the gurus in India are Mayavadis. So it's a very dangerous situation. So how can you go through that whole cloud of confusion, then come to Krishna consciousness? It's only by meeting someone like Srila Prabhupada, who's boldly speaking the truth. Boldly speaking the truth. And he's representing the whole Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, as Ramanuja was representing the Sri Sampradaya. There's four original Vaishnava Sampradayas. They all have the same conclusion, that Krishna is the Supreme Personality. Godhead is supreme truth. And they've all been basically fighting with the Mayavadis for centuries. Because not that they're fighting physically, but they have to deal with the Sarirak Bhasya of Sankaracharya, which established the philosophical basis of this oneness theory, Kevala Advaita. Right? But he did that in order to kick the Buddhists out of India and reestablish the authority of the Vedas that had been rejected by Buddha, because the Brahmanas had deviated in the earlier ages of Kali Yuga and were committing killing cows and horses and sacrifices, and then saying, this is Mahaprasadam, you can eat it. So they were promoting meat eating in the name of the Vedas, right? Because they lost the power to put an old cow into the fire and then rejuvenate it and bring it out alive as a young calf, proving that all their mantras were bona fide. That there was a proof that the mantras they were saying were bona fide. Well, when Kali Yuga began, they were not able to do that. But they wanted to continue doing the animal sacrifices because it was profitable to do it. So they just said, well, this is Mahaprasadam, you can take it, So they were promoting meat eating in the name of religion, in the name of the Vedas. So whenever someone is making money using some misinterpretation of Shastras, it's almost impossible to stop them because that's their livelihood, right? So Buddha pulled the rug out from the feet of all these false brahmanas by saying, I reject the Vedas. If you say that's in the Vedas, I reject it. And he started his own religion called Buddhism, right? So that, but Buddha himself said his religion would only be valid for 1,000 years. And that's what happened. And 1,000 years go by, and then Sankaracharya, who's an incarnation of Lord Shiva, comes, and he's ordered by Narayana to trick the Buddhists. So he gives a Buddhist interpretation to the Vedas and reestablishes the Vedas as bona fide Shastra, but with a Buddhist interpretation, or Mayavadi interpretation, so that the Buddhists accepted it. And all of a sudden, everything went back to the Vedas again, right? But now they had to deal with this Sarirak Bhasya. Well, then Madhvacharya, first Ramanujacharya, then first Madhvacharya, I think, and then Ramanujacharya wrote commentaries on the Vedanta Sutra that debunked or that defeated the Mayavad interpretation of Sarirak Bhasya, right? And then after that, the Gaudiya Vaishnavas also produced a debunking of Sharirak Bhashya, and it's still going on, right? But it's very hard for people to give up the Mayavad philosophy because it basically says that you become God, but God is not a person. So it's all crazy stuff, but people like the idea of merging into some universal oneness and becoming God, more or less, right? And they like the idea that the whole material world is an illusion, so they can play with it. If it's an illusion, then they can play with it, right? So then you'll see somebody who's a big mahant, but he smokes and drinks and philanders, but he gets away with it because he says, the world is an illusion. So there's all this confusion in India about spirituality, which is shocking, but that's the fact. So we have to be bold preachers like Prabhupada and like Ramanujacharya, like Madhvacharya. They were very bold, and they didn't compromise with the Mayavadis. Okay, so we'll stop right there. Hari Bol. Glory to Srila Prabhupada. So the modern scientists really also, but at least the Mayavadis, they believe that there's a God. The scientists don't believe there's God. So therefore, those scientists and philosophers who are atheists, they're more honest than the Mayavadis. They clearly say, we don't believe in God. We don't believe in Shastra. But like we explained yesterday, Mayavadi said, no, we believe in God, we believe in the Shastra, and this is our explanation of it. And it's all misleading. So the Mayavadis are worse than the atheistic scientists and philosophers. They're worse. Go ahead. You can use this one. You can use this one here. Here.
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma Bandhu Muhi Savadana Mate Jahara Prasade Bai E Baba Toriya Jai Krishna Prapti Hoy Jaha Hoy Te Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitite Koriya Kya Arana Kori Ho Mane Asha श्री गुरु चरानी रति ऐसे उत्तम गति। जय प्रसाद पूरे सर्व आशा। चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से। चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से। दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित। प्रेमा भक्ति चाह होते अविद्या विनाश जाते। प्रेमा भक्ति चाह होते अविद्या विनाश जाते। वेद गाय जहर चरित। श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदम जनार बंधु। श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदम जनार बंधु। लोकेनाथ लोकेर जीवाना। हा हा प्रभु करो दया देहो मोरे पादश्रय। हा हा प्रभु करो दया देहो मोरे पादश्रय। एबे जास गुशुक त्रिभुवना। श्रीला प्रभुपाद पतित पावना। जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद। नमः ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे। निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद। श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि भक्त वृंद। चैतन्य नित्यानंद Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva. Nitya Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitya Gaura Hari Bol. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way with which we can attain pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him ecstatic prema emanates, by him ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, and the Lord and master of the devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread all over the three worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet, Srila Prabhupada.